What's up, fight fans? This Saturday, Kevin Lee makes his highly anticipated return in the UFC in the welterweight division. But I think before we get into his matchup with Rinat, I think that we dive back a little bit deeper into the story of Kevin Lee and why I think this is so important for the UFC and for his career, and why it's so significant also, right? I mean, you had Kevin Lee back in the day, was a rising prospect within the UFC, started out 9-2 before he had his interim title shot with Tony Ferguson, where he did end up losing via triangle choke, but it looked good for him early on in that Tony Ferguson fight. But after that, we saw a Kevin Lee who was marred with inconsistency, lost his head coach. His head coach ended up taking his own life, and I forgot his name, and I don't want to say the wrong name out of disrespect. Follis, though. I know his last name was Follis. Ever since then, we saw Kevin Lee, he just really lost his identity. We saw a guy who just didn't know what weight class he belonged in, always said that he belonged in a 165 weight class that didn't exist. The UFC came out plenty of times saying that they weren't going to make a weight class for him, or 165, even though there were a lot of guys saying that they wanted that extra weight class. But nonetheless, Kevin Lee was bouncing between 55 and 70, and after his attempted loss for interim gold against Tony Ferguson, we have seen him go 3-5. Were losses to Ally Quinta. He got finished by Dos Anjos, finished by Oliveira. He got dominated by Daniel Rodriguez. I mean, you saw a guy who he just couldn't put it together anymore. We saw flashes of greatness in his fights against Edson Barbosa, Gregor Gillespie. And even before that, like the fight with Michael Chiesa, the fight that got him that interim title shot against Ferguson. He absolutely dominated Chiesa early on before we had that weird controversy with Mario Yamasaki. But Kevin Lee has had a very interesting and very ups and downs with his UFC career. Once he left the UFC, he was let go after his loss to Daniel Rodriguez, and he went out, fought for Khabib's promotion, Eagle FC, and immediately blew his knee out via leg kick to Diego Sanchez. And he was able to survive that leg kick and win a unanimous decision, but it was very sloppy, very lackluster. He looked very rusty. You could see it harmed him or compromised him. He was very compromised the rest of the fight. He was able to squeak out a victory, but it did not help his stock moving forward. And then he had to take a whole nother year off to heal his knee, which I'm pretty sure he's had torn ACLs in the past, if I'm not mistaken. But here he is. He's coming back after a year off, after all this time, all this controversy within his career of inconsistency, ups and downs. But nonetheless, Kevin Lee manages to stay in the picture. Now, this fight has been very low profile. Not a lot of people are talking about it, which is a little bit surprising to me. But Kevin Lee, in his comeback, is getting tossed to the wolves. And that is in his matchup against Rinat. Please forgive me on his last name. Rinat Fakhretdinov. I'm pretty sure I butchered his name. But this guy, I mean, his record at the moment, 20-2. His last two victories over Andreas Michailidis and that absolutely dominating, smothering victory over Brian Battle, where I'm pretty sure he won like 30-25 across the board, where he just used his wrestling where Brian Battle could not go anywhere, completely smothered him, tired him out, wore him out. I mean, it was very impressive to see him do that against a very high-level prospect in Brian Battle, right? So Kevin Lee coming back, getting tossed to the wolves. But what I think will make this fight very interesting, with where Kevin Lee comes from a wrestling background, they might cancel each other out. We might see somewhat of a boxing or kickboxing match, but it all really depends, I think, on the Kevin Lee that shows up this Saturday. If we see a Kevin Lee who's not trying to go out there and put on a highlight performance, we just see him try and go out there, be smart, get the W, have a high fight IQ, I think that we could see him get the victory. But we've seen time and time again, we've seen a lot of inconsistencies. He's taken a lot of time off, and we saw most recently in the Henry Cejudo fight how ring rust, octagon rust is definitely a very real thing. And we can see that playing out here with Kevin Lee this Saturday. But if he comes in shape, comes in healthy with a solid game plan and sticks to it, we can definitely see it. Because, I mean, on a great night, on his best night, he is a top 5 guy. He is championship level. I'm not sure about at welterweight. but at 155, he damn sure is. But it's all about seeing if he can put up a good game plan, not blow his tank out too early, trying to force these takedowns. He's going to have to let these things come to him, and that's where he's going to find the success. But going against a guy like Rinat, who hasn't lost in 9 fucking years. This guy, he's got good power in his hands. His wrestling is able to open up his striking. He puts the fear in these guys. They worry so much about his wrestling that he gets the knockouts plenty of times. I think he has 11 knockouts in his career. I think he's got, 6 submissions. I apologize on my face there. So his wrestling definitely opens up his striking, and it shows in his record. A lot of knockouts. His only losses have been by decision, so he hasn't been finished in his MMA career yet. So I definitely consider this guy's 31 years old. Kevin Lee's 30. These guys are both in their physical primes right now. I love this matchup. I don't like this as a good comeback fight for Kevin Lee because maybe this is the UFC trying to push Rinat and having him beat a real solid name that everybody knows in Kevin Lee. Because Kevin, he's gone out there. Maybe he's rubbed some feathers the wrong way. I'm not really sure, but I love this fight. And if he goes out there with a really solid game plan, we can see a really good comeback, the start of a good comeback for Kevin Lee. But then again, this dude Rinat, this Russian guy, man, he's a killer. If he just gets it to the ground and if he just is able to smother Kevin Lee, it could be a very long fight for Kevin Lee's comeback. Guys, let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Love to hear your guys' thought. Do you guys think Kevin Lee's going to get the dub, or do you guys think that this is a complete mismatch for him in his return to the UFC? Love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to continue getting more MMA content by yours truly. Mr. Mustache, MMA News out. Let's fucking go, fight fans.